Welcome to another segment of Politics Done Right. Today I am honored to have the one and only Karl Smith with Voter Education Project. But you know what? We're not necessarily talking voter education today, though indirectly you can always turn everything into a voting matter. But we're talking about COVID-19, and Karl has done a whole lot of studying on COVID-19. Karl, welcome to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing great. First, before we even get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about Voter Education Project and how people can get there, what you want to do with it.
Well, I'm a father of a child with autism and kind of concerned person. I'm a computer and electrical engineer. So anyway, I've been watching politics for the last couple of decades and kind of applying some both economic principles and engineering principles and so on, just understanding what's going on and maybe how we can do a little bit better. With COVID, I've been watching looking at the math and just understanding, a few of the basic cause-effect relationships and putting those together and just seeing how our current government is doing so badly in the response and how we could actually do better and then projecting out into the future.
Well, before we even get started on this, you sent me a website that is very disturbing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show that one right now. And folks, what you're going to see on the screen blocking me out is the current death count as of today. And this is a website that Karl just turned us on to. It is called worldmeters.info/coronavirus/country/US. That is where we're at right now. 17,838 deaths so far. New York had a death last night, this last 24 hours, of 777 people, one state. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Karl, we are talking today about the impact of COVID-19, not only as you see it, but as it is. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that from your perspective?
Well, if we let's look at a few kind of graphs and so on. If you go to the first graph, you basically see the death rates increasing daily. Now the worldwide, the last it's been up over 7,000 now a day. It's dying in the world, and added about 85,000 yesterday. You may have a little bit different numbers with the current day. I captured my screen early enough in the day where it's really capturing yesterday and not the day's numbers. The day's numbers will look a little bit down, a little bit better, but the day isn't complete. We're just partially into the day. So anyway, it's growing quite dramatically there. And if you click on the deaths, there's a little deaths thing. It actually show you a little blue where the deaths are actually increasing they're up to 95,000 worldwide, 7,000 today. The next one to go over to is that second link that I sent you.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you go down, you're at the top of the page. If you page down, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and then you'll get to a place, a little bit, keep going down a little bit.
Just tell me what the heading is.
Well, you'll see some graphs, COVID, growth in COVID-19. Yeah, there you go, right there. Okay, now this one actually shows like the world, currently or thereabouts is doubling every 8 days, and then 13 days for Italy, and 6 days for the United States, and then 10 days, and so on. So the thing to get, to really be watching is how often this thing is, that COVID is doubling. Now you'll see down a little bit further. A lot of the days are 5 and 6 days and so on. And we were actually we were doubling every 2.5 days for the first month. So in March, we went from 0 to 4,000 deaths with that rate in 2.5 days, and now we've slowed down to actually in the first 4 days. So it took a month ago the first 4,000 cases, and the next 4,000 cases it took 4 days.
But let me stop you there a second, Karl. These graphs, I am not sure how old they are right now. Maybe you can tell me. I think the last one is up until April 10th, which is actually today. But I mean, I thought I've been reading the news where it says that we are actually the death rate was starting to leave that exponential model because apparently social distancing is working. But this graph that you have here, it seems to me like the last date on it is April 10th, and it still shows almost an exponential growth continuing.
Well, it is. It's just on a lower exponential growth, and we'll get to that in just a minute. If you go back up to that one where it had those, how many days? Yeah, that one there. If you look at beside the days, you'll see, for example, the United States, we're up to 16,690. Now that was yesterday's, or through last night. And that's, a little bit, over to the right of that, it says 1873. And you see those last three little bars, up to the right of the United States. Those are, there's been the last 3 days about, 1,900 deaths per day. And we can't use the cases, rate because that's just a small fraction. They're estimating maybe about a tenth, of the actual confirmed cases is actually what's out there. So, so we're looking at, we're up in about 400 and something thousand cases, confirmed cases in the United States, and they're saying, well, it's probably about 10 times, 10 times that. But anyway, but if we look at the deaths, now the deaths are a little bit off because, if it's not confirmed, like if they have a pneumonia or something, and they haven't been able to run the test to find out if if the person has COVID-19, then they don't count it as a COVID-19. Now later on,
I think that is going to be problematic because Governor Cuomo of New York said something that was a bit disturbing, that a lot of people are dying in their homes and that nobody is saying, let's go ahead and test those dead people to see what they had was coronavirus. So what that tells me is in as much as they have reduced the total amount of people they assume will die from, let's say, between 120 and 240 down to 60-something thousand, that may still be inaccurate and the actual models may be correct, but we just don't know. Am I saying that as you see it?
Right. Yeah, we'll get a better count over time, but even so, it's going to be a lot, looking at the death, what's changing in the death rates and the number of deaths and so on, is going to be a lot more accurate than what's happening with the testing. If we were actually testing and testing, 150,000 people a day, that's just ridiculous. I mean, they need to be gearing up for testing, millions per day. I mean, we need to, gear up to test, to be prepared to test, to run 1 billion tests. Because we're 333 million people.
Well, actually, that is correct because you need to have recurrent tests to see when somebody goes from positive to negative, right?
Yeah, and some people need to be tested multiple times. Some people won't need to be tested until we know it's in their community and so on. But there's also two different types of tests. So it's like we need up in the billions of each type of test. One is for the virus itself, and the other is for the antibody to find out what who has had it. Let's go over to that graph that I'd sent you. We're looking at the 2x graph, and if you look at the row in beige, the very top part of the top row is in yellow and stuff. But if you look 2 rows down, it'll say 2.5. What that is basically, and if you look at under the 1 month, there's 4 or 5 columns out there, you'll see 1 month. It says 4,000 or 4K. So that's basically what happened to the United States, before we were really starting to do anything in terms of mitigating, what's going on here. So it went from 0 or 1 or 2, to 4,000 or up in the thousands of times increase in 1 month. And so if it's doubling every 2.5 days, it means in three and a third doublings basically is a 10 times increase. So when people are looking at, well, there's only a few cases here. Well, you got to realize that few cases in three and a third double. So it's like in 9 days, then that few cases is going to be 10 times higher. And then in 18 days, it's going to be 100 times higher. In 27 days, it's going to be 1,000 times higher. So when the president started seeing that we had just a few cases, but then if you're looking at the doubling rates and so on, how fast as that was growing, and I'm sure the CDC and all this, they understood, the exponential growth here. So even though you're only looking at a few people dead, you shouldn't be saying, well, everything's going to go away, or even, you're just your few cases. Everything's going to go away in a few days. We're going to get, we've got 15 people, it's going to go away. Instead of that, unless there was something actually to stop it, which they had that done, then, you would expect to continue that growth. And that's what happened. So for the next month, we had 4,000 people die. And if we basically did that, you look out one more month, we'd be up to 17 million people, which is basically more than what would actually die because the death rate isn't that high. So, and also as you get up into, starting to impact, in the last 10% or the last, when you're going in the last part of that, you're going from 1% to 10%, then you're going 10% to 100% of the population, then you start getting a lot less cases.
Let me stop you there and ask a question, because I think there was some data out there that suggested about half of the American population will ultimately get this COVID-19. Is that correct?
Well, that's up in the air. That may or may not happen depending on what they do. If they really clamp down on this and hopefully we'll be, long before that, then we would have vaccines and treatments and all that. If you look at the bottom graph, the maximum death at 100% of population exposure, there's it shows, for different exposure rates, or different death rates from 1 to 5%. And then it shows what SARS did at 6.5%. And then Ebola basically is 27. It's actually 27, 52. There's 5 or 6 or more strains of Ebola. A few of them are, they don't have any deaths, but then there's 3 of them that are pretty deadly at 27%.
80%, yeah.
Yeah, 27, 52, and then 80. I only did the 27 to 79. So, at different, for the United States, you're looking at how many people would die under those different impact rates. The United States right now, if you look at the graph right above that, this middle graph, we're at, 0.664%. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the old one there. Let me get up my newer one.
You can just estimate, Karl. It doesn't have to be exact, because what we're trying to do is kind of give people the impact of this in general.
Right. Well, basically, okay, so at 1 in 1,000, so, now that we're up into a much higher range where we're looking at, 1 in 1,000, when we're up in the, several hundred, several 100,000 cases confirmed, that means that, we're up around, we're 333 million people. So we're 1 in 1,000 or so at that level. That would be, confirmed. So basically, that's 0.1%, but, that doesn't sound like a lot. The problem is that 10 times that, so after you go through, if you're, if you're iterating every, 5 days, that means, in 15 days, it's going to be 10 times, or a little more, like 18 days. You're going to be about you're going to be another 10 times that. So if you're at, 1 in 1,000, 15 days later or so, you're 1 in 100.
Right.
Then 15 days later, you're 1 in 10.
Yeah.
And 15 days later,
that's called exponential, yeah. Now,
right.
Now, the interesting thing is we have the numbers now. Everybody just heard us spend, I guess, 10 minutes or so talking numbers. Here's the reality. How will COVID-19 change us as a country, us as a world? Because, a lot of all these numbers, people start to get, wow, it is bad. Let's start talking about it as how is this going to change our country? How is this going to change our world? And in the prep for this program, you have some interesting bullet points that I think we need to go over.
All right. So obviously, they said, well, sicker people and older people and so on are going to die. Unfortunately, U.S. population is pretty sick. And actually, in the graphs and everything, there was some information about the percentage of people that were dying compared to the number of cases, and there's some discussions around that. But kind of skipping over that, we're going to have a lot more. I mean, we're going to have between 2% or 3 or 4% of people dying from this, and then after that, there's the people that die because they weren't able to get proper medical care. They're dying of other things. They had a car accident, and then but the medical system's overwhelmed, or they needed an operation or whatever, or something got delayed. So there's going to be a lot of other people, dying and stuff because not because of COVID itself, but because of the resources that took up, and then a lot of it's opening our economy and all of that. It's all a function of how aggressive do we get with clamping down on this thing? If we really get aggressive on the masks, on top of the social distancing and hand washing, the kind of ice or the stay at home, type of directives and so on. If we get people to wear masks out, that's going to have a huge impact, on top of everything else on, how fast this thing gets clamped down. So if we don't get people wearing masks, and I'm talking about like what the Surgeon General was showing is just like the little, hand, or scarves that you fold up. It cuts down the amount, certainly that's exhaled from a person, or really has a good block against that. Now they say that they're not effective on basically protecting somebody that somebody else is around you that has it. But the reality is that one layer of they said, or there was a study, one layer of cloth, blocked even the small particle, like 40%. But like the way that they're folding this, like this one has like 8 layers of material. And then the larger particles are going to get trapped. And this is all about, how much viral load you get when you're exposed. So the more you can cut that down, the more unfavorable the conditions are for transmission. So if we do these things, and I know Americans, we're pretty proud and pretty conceited and everything. We really don't want to wear face masks, and so, but, I am seeing a big, a big increase in face mask use at stores and Walmart and all that when people are out in public. And we'll do that, then like Korea or Taiwan, they never had a shelter-in-place order. They got people, they had a number of procedures, social distancing, but, strong use of face masks and all that. They never locked down their country, and they have, well, let's see, it was 5 deaths at the beginning of the month. Now it's 6 deaths. So they're doing a really, really good job.
they're very disciplined. Now, in some of the things that you sent over here, you had something that I wondered about, and I'm skipping around here because I really should have asked that question about how the world changes near the end. But before I do that, I want to come. You said in one of the notes, in reality, COVID-19, yes, it's bad, but it's not as bad as a pandemic could be. Explain.
Right. Well, and that one graph I was showing Ebola and SARS and everything. So if you had much higher mortality rates, but also it was more easily transmitted. This one is relatively. I mean, it can get spread around. Ebola was harder to transmit, and although its death rate is a lot higher, so it was able to get contained. And plus, we had an administration at the time that really helped the world and helped the areas that were having this problem. But if we had one that was, had a 20% mortality, had a 60 or 80%,
with this transmission rate,
right? Or the transmission right now that they're saying, well, a person that gets it infects on the average of a couple or three people. So but if a person got it and it, infected 10 people, that would be worse. And, this one, it's hard to see somebody or somebody gets sick slowly. And so you don't know that somebody even has it before they're already out, spreading it to other people.
I think that's an important concept because, early on into this epidemic, I wrote a piece for Daily Kos, and I really got castigated, rightfully so, because when I saw the death rate of 2% or something like that, I said, it is bad, but I mean, the good thing about it is most Americans are going to do just fine, because if you look at the sick population that you spoke about before, the sick population is pretty high in the United States, and so that's understandable there. Well, the person came back and said, you need to really learn how infections work. And he said, the problem with corona is that corona is very infectious, so it affects a lot of people. Ebola, yes, it's bad, but Ebola wasn't nearly as infectious as this one is. In other words, as transmissible, I guess is what I should say.
Right. Well, and if you get a high enough load, even very healthy people are having a problem. Mm-hmm. And so our medical workers and it's just ridiculous that just think how inexpensive in the context of everything it would be to have 1 billion or 2 masks around. I mean, even if everybody had their own mask. I had some N95 masks in my garage. I didn't even realize I was buying such a good mask when a few years ago.
I did too, and it was my wife told me, don't be wearing that outside because people are going to say you're taking it away from the healthcare worker. And it's like, no, this is a dirty N95 that I was scrubbing something with,
Right, yeah. My wife has, allergies and respiratory issues, so she uses them. I mean, they've been used, but we're going to use them over and over and over. And we're going to, we're disinfecting them and so on. So there's not something we can pass on to somebody else. So
you just said disinfect. How do you disinfect an N95 mask?
Well, she's putting some Lysol on it.
Okay,
you can also put them on, put them out in the sun. And, evidently another good thing about COVID-19 is that it's not a very durable virus. So, so it doesn't last too long if you really kind of, if you wash your hands pretty good, like the fabrics, like these things, and if you just kind of wash them a bit, for a little while and dry them out, then it's not going to infect you. It's all about how much virus do you get enough? Is it enough to really launch an infection?
Right.
If you can get that amount down, you just have a better infection. Plus, if you get that amount down, then your body has a chance to launch its own defenses. But if you get this huge dosage, and what we're exposing our medical workers and first responders to a lot of times is these very large doses of the virus that even young people, are having a problem with and dying. Unfortunately, we're hearing more and more cases of healthy people, dying, young, healthy people dying. I'm not talking young under 60. I'm talking young under 30 and under.
I got you. 20. We got to move on because you came on and said COVID-19 one of the things that we really should be working on very highly right now is testing. And
Right.
you're concerned that that is something that we're not doing. So go ahead.
Yeah, basically, we can't. The president wants to reopen everything in May, but with the growth rates, you get one case in a community, and without any kind of, mitigating procedures, you're going to have within less than 10 days, you're going to have it 10 times that, and less than, so 18 days, you're going to have 100 times that, so if we don't have these things, and we know it's out all over the place, and so the hotspots now, they're not, they won't be the hotspots, you kind of lock down those places, but it's out all over the place. And if we're not doing aggressive testing, then we don't know who has it, who doesn't have it. And we really have, this is, the kind of shelter in place, shelter at home. It's kind of a stone age, tool. We've got a stone hammer here that we're clubbing this thing with, instead of being able to use a scalpel. If you were testing people, like China didn't shut down their whole society. Taiwan didn't shut down their whole society and all this, but they did isolate people. They did, if you can keep it down, the transmission rate low enough, you can actually do case, or transmission, tracking, and then that's a much, so then you can keep people out working, keeping the economy alive. So if we want to get back to that, we've got to really ramp up to, and get serious about producing 1 billion tests, and then from there, the next billion, and so on. So we're going to need, and this is chump change. If their latest numbers are, we're going to take off like in the second quarter about 40% of GDP. Our economy is $22 trillion. Okay, 40% of that, about $8 trillion, lost. That's annualized and stuff. So at least a couple of $1 trillion just for that quarter alone. $1 trillion. We're not talking about a few billion or even a few 100 billion or whatever. We're talking about in the trillions. Have everybody with a mask up front, not even, these masks, but, an N95 mask, have those in people's homes, all of that would have been chump change.
Karl, one of the problems with America is it is run by a business sect. And the business, unfortunately, you are an engineer. Unfortunately. And what that really means is that you think. A business person, or a lot of the business, the titans of finance, in as much as somebody like you may not quite say that, these are not deep thinkers. These are guys that have learned, they've gone to the McCone School of Business or the Harvard School of Business or whatever, and they learn these numerical charts that govern this economic system. And that's all they see. They don't see the intrinsics. They can't think through different levels of indirection like an engineer or a scientist or a good teacher would think. But those are the ones who run our economy. And COVID, I think, is one of the issues that will expose this. And I'm hoping with your platform, Voter Education Project, and these other types of platforms, that we will have people who can reach different audiences to inform folks on those issues.
Right.
Because, go ahead.
I'm less critical on the business community and more, it's more about, but business can't solve this thing, by itself. We really need heavy government involvement in this. For example, there's like one mask manufacturer, N95 manufacturer there in Texas. And, they were interviewing him and he said, well, we're doing about 650,000 masks a day right now. We could be a lot more, but the last time he ramped up, back in the SARS or maybe Ebola or something. Anyway, he got orders, and so he got a bunch of orders in a short period of time. He hired a bunch of 150 people, and made all these extra investments and everything. And then he basically just hit the wall. Nobody was ordering anything.
Right.
And so that's where government comes in and says, okay, I want to give this person a long-term contract, or this company a long-term contract. Okay, so he can't just go all of a sudden just, here's somebody that knows how to do this. He could be creating, he says $1 million, but I mean, if the government came in and gave him a really good contract, I mean, maybe he could be $10 million a day or something much higher. And we need to really get, we need to get 1 billion masks created,
Yes.
And as a, as kind of a first, goal, and then have
Carl,
a good.
you said something important. You said something important earlier. You mentioned the size of the economy. You then mentioned the investment that would be made, even to make that businessman who knows how to make masks whole. In other words, and this is, you're right, where government comes in, right? Government we need to have that guy when we need to have that guy. So therefore, if there's an oversupply of masks because we didn't exactly know where this is, that was an investment in that oversupply of masks based on the trajectory.
And we're going to need them in the future.
Right. Well, Bill Gates said something. It's amazing, similar to what you just said. Bill Gates said there are 3 or 4 vaccine paths right now that they're working on. And they have already started building the factory for all 4 of them. He said it is likely 3 of those factories will not be, will just be thrown away.
Right.
But
and what public should fund is to fund all 4 of those, and then basically then the ones that really worked out, we're going to basically then really put a lot more money into that one, and then go with that.
Exactly. But that's not the risk that our economic system takes.
Government, the industrial military complex, that's actually how they work, and so we need to be treating this as a war. And so if we want a new plane, a new fighter plane, we get, several government contractors, we give them, some development money. They go off and build, 3 or 4 different versions of what we want, and then we pick what's going to work the best. So, and then that company gets to go forward contract. So there's all sorts of ways that we can really just, this country has a lot of might and a lot of creative people, and we just have to have the right, we have to have we have to counter these ideas that business solves everything, that we don't really need, we just need small government and states, state rights, and states should be doing everything on world. We're freaking Americans, we need to talk, we need to think as a nation, and we need to realize that government has a critical role to be able to protect us through welfare. And the Constitution, the welfare, the government's supposed to look out for the welfare of the people. These are not things that individuals or individual businesses or anything like that can control. We have to have our faith and put our faith and vote, for the right people that actually believe in frickin' government. And then
I love that, and that is one of the tenets of your new organization, Voter Education Project, isn't it?
Right. It's basically trying to show people how bottom-up economics actually works. When we invest in what our people and our businesses need to thrive, they do. When we don't invest in those things, they don't. And one of those investments, it's education, it's health, it's research, infrastructure, safe community, but it's safety, community development. But it's also safety nets. So safety nets, basically, if we don't, kind of rescue, areas that get wiped out for something, or like with the virus here, where it can really hit anybody, anywhere, if we don't basically fix those as a system and make those whole, then it pulls all of us down. So there might be a few winners or whatever, but most of us are losers in this by not being proactive. Yes, that's the other thing that GOP believes in, is reactive government, not proactive government. We teach our kids, we discipline or we chastise our kids for not, seeing that such and such would have happened. So why didn't they take steps to, prevent it? Why can't we chastise ourselves or chastise our leaders to say, okay, if something is happening, we can see something happening. And we put a lot of money into all sorts of National Institutes of Health, CDC, and all, lots of research. We know about these things. We don't know everything about things, but we know a lot. And we know that these things can basically, go through these exponential growth and all of that. It's not new. And the Obama administration put in stuff in place. Trump administration got rid of that stuff, so we're less prepared. And basically, the Trump administration is going to be responsible for killing tens of thousands of us, if not tens of hundreds of thousands, if not up into the millions. Because the people that'll die, like right now we're at 17,000 people thereabouts. another doubling, which is, they say, well, 6 days. Every 6 days it doubles. Or I'm sorry, it doubles.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Okay, 10 times on that. Okay, so it went from 4,000 for the first month, another 4,000 in the next 4 days. So that was a big slowdown. So it was like that was four days.
No, Karl, you're right. The exact numbers are immaterial. The concept that you're putting out there is what matters, and that is actually so right. Now let's move that back, because you hit a whole lot of stuff there, and I want to reiterate. Therefore, and here's the therefore that I want to bring on. If we finally realize, because I knocked our business schools, I knocked our executives a few times, and I know that based on the way you run your activism, that is not where you are. But I found it interesting. I found it interesting that all those items that you support, all those good things that you support, meaning what government needs to do, how government should work with let's say corporations, etc., are all the things that currently a sect of them, not all of them, but a sect of them are against. And I think that points out to the need of the kind of work that you are putting your effort into with Voter Education Project. Because I think one of the things that I've been saying, Karl, is let's start giving the monies to the people directly, and they will vote with their monies what companies are worthwhile to them, as opposed to the other way around. I think if we start thinking that way, and the only way we can think that way if some of the work people like you are doing on voter education, etc., is successful.
Well, it's about unrigging the system. I mean, we got a terribly rigged system at this point, and the progressives. I mean, a lot of the stuff that progressives are after, it's actually not like loony out of the left wing stuff. These are actually solid. They have good, solid macroeconomic principles and behavioral principles, and some of my work is actually showing where we shouldn't actually think of those things as really progressive. I mean, they should be. I mean, conservatives should really be on board with a lot of these things, because if you go against the way things work, if you go against human nature, you go against just just the way the economy works. It's not going to work out for what you're trying to do in that direction. So if you understand a few fundamentals, and that's what we're trying to get back to, is fundamentals that everybody should get and understand, how those connect together to show what we have to do to have a good economy, a good, good democracy, that will really be proactive and help, and we'll be in so much better shape. And actually, there's a fight within the kind of capitalistic system, basically from this idea that shareholders have primacy, and businesses shouldn't have to worry about other stakeholders to basically like B corps and all that, where they're saying no, we need to look at all of our stakeholders here. The customer, the employee, the environment, the community, and stuff, and not just the shareholder. They can make money. They need to make money to stay in business, obviously, but not at the expense of externalizing all the negatives. They have to make money by actually doing something that's right for a number of groups and not just the shareholders. And they will do well. Actually, they don't do well with an unstable economy. There's going to be a bunch of rich people losing their frickin' shirts, because their income is not just their wealth is not just in their income, it's the value of their assets. If we take a $22 trillion economy, take it down to a $16 trillion or $14 trillion economy, people aren't going to be doing, lots of people, including some wealth. And there's plenty of wealthy people that are against the system. They've made money through the system, but they realize that even if they didn't have quite as much money, they would actually do better because they'd have a stable system. And they may actually make more money because the economy would be even that much bigger. Instead of a $22 trillion a year economy, you'd be at a $32 trillion a year economy. if we basically, we go after poverty and all of it. Anyway,
what you're saying is prescient. There's so much to that, and not only so much to that, but we'll have to cover in another show why that is the case. Because here's it. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm not going to ask you for a response on this one because I know where you're going to be on the response for this one. But my thing is that it is by design that we don't necessarily want Americans to have a free will in a free enterprise system, because then everybody would really have equal access to success. And that means that those who have been able to use capital as the form of further extraction wouldn't be able to do that anymore. But we'll talk about that another time when we can organize it better. But Karl, let me tell you, you gave a good outline here that you sent when we were going to talk about this show. There are a lot of issues on the outline that we didn't go through. So I have a big favor to ask of you, and that is, I know your time is precious, but when you have some time, this well-prepared document, I would love to see in a form that, in some form of an article that I can actually reblog from your votereducationproject.org, right? votereducationproject.com site, because I think the bullet points that you have here, many of which we didn't discuss here, is imperative that people see it. Well-prepared document. So give me a closer, Karl, and let's get out of here.
Well, wear masks if you're in public. This is going to have a huge impact on the rate of transmission. Do the social distancing and all that, and then push on government at like hell and the Trump administration, to get the frickin' act together and realize we're one nation. We need our government to come in, and coordinate the logistics and, get the companies to do the, we've got the businesses that will actually produce this stuff. We just need all that coordinated and paid for, and not leaving them out in the wind and saying, hell with you, once this thing is over. They can't make that business calculation and just leave lots of people unemployed and just and themselves in financial ruin and all that. So, fix that frickin' problem. That's not a hard one to fix. And, let's do this thing. Damn it.
Karl Smith, let's fix that frickin' problem. It's been my pleasure to have you on. We'll do this again. We'll do this on more specific projects on Voter Education Project and on others. Thank you so kindly for having been a guest here on Politics Done Right.
Oh, thank you. And if you want to look at, any of the audience wants to look at, one, like a 10-minute, or actually, I think it's about 10 minutes, 11 minutes, a little video called How Bottom-Up Economics Works. If you go to www.votereducationproject.com /HBUEW, How Bottom-Up Economics Works. And
I'll put that in the blog post for this show, and I'll also put the link to the video to get to your blog, and so they can watch it at your blog site. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so kindly, Karl. I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.